You are listening to audio from University Baptist Church in Beaver Creek, Ohio. Our mission is to make wholehearted followers of Christ who know Him and make Him known. Please enjoy this podcast and visit us at ubcbeavercreek.com for more information.
Welcome into UBC Talking Points. Our purpose is to make wholehearted followers of Jesus who know Him and make Him known through ministry and theology conversations. I'm your host, Bryson Jackson, and today I'm joined by the intellectually astute Dr. Scott Dixon. Scott, my man, how are we today?
Doing well. Thank you, Bryson.
And is that smooth jazz, Scott, I've got across the table?
I've never had a bigger mic in front of my face. It just makes me want to go low and slow.
Oh, fantastic.
FM, WBC,
Yeah.
midnight.
This is smooth jazz.
Smooth jazz coming at you. Yanni after the break.
Oh, man. Well, listen, I'm really grateful to have you in here, and we're going to have a blast just talking about our topic for today is what is discipleship. So, Scott, you might have a thing or two to say about discipleship, as you happen to have the joy of teaching that on a regular basis, do you not?
I do.
So tell me a little bit about how you got into that and how long you've been teaching.
Well, I've been teaching roughly 27 years at Cedarville University after spending 6 years. Yes, Bryson Jackson, former graduate.
Mm-hmm.
But after 6 years as a youth pastor, and I wanted to come back and teach in ministry areas. That was my kind of focus. And so I did a lot early on in youth ministry and how to teach the Bible. And this class on discipleship was taught by another person who ended up retiring. So I kind of got that about maybe, 5-6 years ago. And so I get to teach it every semester to around 30 students who are preparing, many for ministry, but others preparing for other types of vocational work, but are all very interested in what it means to make disciples in the church as laymen, as well as those who are going to be in ministry itself. So I've enjoyed it, and I've always enjoyed reading books on spiritual growth and spiritual maturity and thinking about that. And so this gives me an outlet to talk about it with students.
Yeah, so obviously you're working with students a lot over at Cedarville, and also how long have you been serving as an elder at UBC?
Third year, so I'm going on my fourth.
All right, fantastic. We are very lucky and grateful to have you, that the Lord has brought you here and that you shepherd and lead very well. So, well, I've got an opening question for you, and then we can dive into our content. But before we do that, opening question, what is your favorite book you have read this past year?
Well, by the way, for those of you who want to know in the know, behind the scenes, deep dive into these UBC podcasts, they do send questions out ahead of time.
Ooh, got him.
To give me a little bit of chance to prepare. And so when Bryson asked that question, I reflected on my last year, and so I broke them down into categories. So, and by the way, this is my favorite hobby is just to read. So I like to read. So my favorite book of the last year, I would say, is Remaking the World: How 1776 Created the Post-Christian West by a British guy named Andrew Wilson. And I liked it. Number one, he is a great writer. Number two, it's history-based. I love to read history. It's my favorite genre. Number three, it's also the history of ideas, which is something I like to read. How have certain ideas developed over time historically? And then the writer would use situations and historical people and just to kind of explain it and illustrate it. And this one is about Christianity and how it developed from 1776 onward. And Andrew Wilson is an evangelical pastor in England, and just really good.
That's fantastic.
I recommend it.
Yeah, that's cool.
I've done a lot of reading this last year on deconstruction and doubting our faith, just because of a personal interest in it. But secondly, back in the fall, I kind of signed up for asking for a friend, our series after Easter on that question of deconstruction. What do you know someone who's struggling with doubt? So I read a number of books about that. So my favorite one from that is called Wandering Toward God, Finding Faith Amid Doubts and Big Questions by a philosopher at a Christian school in Dallas named Travis Dickinson.
Shameless plug for the Asking for a Friend series. Feel free to go back and listen to those sermons from the Scott Dixon on the Sermons podcast.
Yeah, and we had 2 sermons that revolved around that. Yeah. Spiritual growth, that's something I'm always keeping my eyes open for books that are coming out on that. So in the last year, 3 books I recommend: Dream Small, The Secret Power of the Ordinary Christian Life. Again, I think it's a British guy by Seth Lewis. Digital Liturgies, Rediscovering Christian Wisdom in an Online Age by Samuel James. Now, I've also, and this has been happening since 2005, I keep track of and do reading on the effects back then on the internet, for example.
Okay.
And then the screen, and then the phone. And I've just always, at first it was just all secular stuff talking about it. And I would always think in my head, well, how is a Christian supposed to look at this? And I thought I should write a book on this, and I never did. Now there's thousands of them. But the best one from last year I read was this guy. It's called Digital Liturgies, and it's about that and the online age. And as you know, there's more and more to come out. Now the next phase is going to be AI. And how does that affect us as Christians? How should Christians look at that? What if your new pastor is an AI? Is that okay? What if Jason Wing gets all his sermons through AI? Is that okay?
ChatGPT.
Are we going to have Christian ChatGPTs put out by Lifeway? I don't know.
Interesting.
And a third one is a book just known by God, A Biblical Theology of Personal Identity. This is very near and dear to me in, again, spiritual growth and discipleship. And it sounds like a theology book. But it's really, a guy name's, by the way, this is an Australian, so a little different. His name's Brian Rosner. But he just talks about what it means to be in Christ, to be united to Christ, who we are in him, and how that determines who we are. The better we understand that, and that we're known by God intimately through Jesus, it helps us to walk and follow after him. It's just a really good exploration of that. So that's spiritual growth. Another topic.
Keep going. I love
it. You asked me. You asked for one. I got 20. Yeah. Another one, just general theology, because the other thing I do teach at Cedarville is theology classes. That's for the Bible minor. If you don't know more about that, look up cedarville.edu.
Shameless plug.
Yeah. Biblical Critical Theory by a guy named Christopher Walken. This is this one because I grew up in this, the rise and fall of dispensationalism, how the evangelical battle over the end time shaped a nation, by Daniel Hummel.
Interesting.
If you ever wondered where Left Behind came from, this is the book for you. And then this is one, I mean, I like it, but I really want to recommend it, especially in the audiences of local churches and lay people. You Are a Theologian by J.T. English and Jen Wilkins.
Yeah,
which takes those typical that you have to read if you go to a Christian college, textbooks on theology. And it breaks it down, makes much more, flows a lot better and just more real world-ish for the typical layperson who's maybe never been to a Christian college.
Yeah.
A couple of books on the church itself, not to be controversial, but you know, what are we going to do 2020? What's already here, and just we didn't do well 2016, 2020, especially when it comes to American politics and the church. So one good book I felt, again, some people not agree, Truth Over Tribe, Pledging Allegiance to the Lamb, Not the Donkey or the Elephant, by Miller and Simon. I really found that was helpful.
Nice.
And then another book called Winsome Conviction, Disagreeing Without Dividing the Church, by a guy named Tim Muehlhoff, a professor out at Talbot in California, which, again, we don't do a very good job of that, learning how to disagree without dividing. Biographies, these are best, just The Narnian, a biography of C.S. Lewis by Alan Jacobs. It's kind of an older book. And then little known fact, trivia, I like to read presidential biographies, and I've read a biography of every president up to Obama. And so a new one came out last year out of a pretty unknown president named Gerald Ford, who followed Nixon, wasn't a president for long. And that book was called Ordinary Man and the Surprising Life and Historic Presidency of Gerald P. Ford.
Interesting.
And then last but not least, some books just on general history. The Demon of Unrest by Eric Larson about the beginning of the Civil War. Philosopher of the Heart by Claire Carlyle about a guy, just a Danish philosopher named Søren Kierkegaard. And then on Great Fields, The Life and Unlikely Heroism of Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain by Ronald White. If you've ever seen the movie Gettysburg, you need to see it. It's 75 hours long.
It is a good movie.
But it is a very good movie.
Super long.
And the guy from Maine who holds the line for the Union forces, right? I think it was Little Round Top. That guy, and he's a Christian man, is named Joshua Chamberlain. And it's about him. He became governor of Maine, etc. So there you go. And he had a killer mustache.
Yeah.
Much like Bryson Jackson.
Well, there you have it. You did not know that you were going to get a reading list for the next year or two, but there you go. And no, I love it, Scott. And I have so many questions based upon everything that you just brought up too that I want to ask you, but for the sake of the show's content, I'm going to keep moving.
Okay.
Oh man, I love it.
It's actually 15 books. I just counted.
Oh, okay. Well, it's manageable. It's manageable.
Almost just one a month.
Summer reading list.
Yeah.
So our topic for today, we want to really drill into discipleship. And as we think about that definition and topic in and of itself, let's start here. So discipleship is a buzzword in the church. I think that I hear that a lot. There are a lot of definitions, though, and a lot of meanings when people use the term. I feel like we're using the same vocabulary, right? But we don't have the same dictionary. And so that term is being thrown around, but what does it mean exactly? So as we think about, some of the clear definitions from things maybe that you've taught or passages in the Word that you want to take us to, how would you define it? And what are some overarching thoughts on this topic? We'll start there.
Well, discipleship on the one hand, I think is just a very simple concept, just to follow Jesus more closely.
Okay.
And to help others follow Jesus more closely.
Okay.
That's it.
So it's not a program within the church?
No.
It's not a class?
No.
Okay.
And by the way, if you leave off the second half of the sentence, helping others follow Jesus, you aren't doing disciple and you aren't being a disciple.
Okay.
And this is something else that their books get into. And, the difference between being a disciple and doing discipleship.
Okay.
But I think, again, they're integrated. You don't have one without the other. Being a disciple is simply being a learner of Jesus. Okay, just what you see happening in the Gospels. But yet Jesus, from the very end, right, of Matthew to the beginning of Acts, says, if you're going to be my disciples, you got to teach other people, right? And you got to go into the othermost parts of the world. That's just part. The mission goes with it. Multiplication goes with it. It's just an expected thing.
Yeah, it's part of the
So to talk about one without the other, it doesn't make any sense. And the good news to me about discipleship is, for any of us, he gives us many opportunities to practice it in the varied spheres of life. So you can think about it from your home, if you're married or have kids, from your single, your roommates, to your work, to your play, to your school, to your church, just to your family. There's just so many opportunities for that to happen. You don't have to say, well, where am I going to go? It's all around you.
So it's a holistic term in nature, in the sense that it defines a lot of areas of the Christian life in the way that we follow Jesus and the way that we help others follow Jesus. And similarly to, I think, how we might use the term worship, right? In the sense that there is a broader terminology of worship, but then there does seem to be, at least in church culture, we'll define like specific music genres as worship. I think that there's kind of been that trend with discipleship as well, where what you're talking about is a little bit of a broader scope. Whereas a lot of times when I hear that term, people normally mean like either meeting one-on-one as kind of I'm discipling this person, or like some kind of course, like an 8-week program of a discipleship course, right? And that's a very narrow scope of that term, whereas your definition that we're working with is a simpler one of just saying, but broad. It's following Jesus, to be a disciple of Jesus, right? Essentially, to be a Christian is what that definition is. Yes. And then like paired into that and imbued in that concept as well as that aspect of multiplication, and that true disciples make other disciples, right? So I think that's a good starting place. And then thinking about that in conjunction with how we think about helping others in discipleship, how do you pair that multiplication in the following Jesus concept? Because I think that we a lot of times will try to separate those two. And you said that multiplication and helping others is kind of a part of that. So
yeah, I think when you have these kinds of discussions about a word like discipleship, which can mean a program in a church or a program in a school,
right?
That we have had to work extra hard, and that's a lot of what's been written last 20 years is trying to extricate discipleship from that.
Yeah.
One of the key books, Trellis and the Vine. Yeah. That a lot of it's been very helpful for churches and people who are going to work in the church. Is the idea is quit. The programs are if you think about a vine, right, in your backyard, you have like a grapevine or ivy. You've got a trellis that it grows up.
Yep.
Right. And so and the analogy that the authors use, again, Australian, they think we as a church do a lot of focus on the trellis, making sure it's sturdy,
structure.
It's painted right, and it looks really good. But we never focus on the vine.
It needs to grow through the structure.
But it needs to grow, and the focus is the vine. The structure helps, and that's the whole point. And as I think about, just at the very basis of who we are as Jesus followers, it means that we're learning how to know him and love him and obey him, changing our identity from Genesis 3, trying to make our own decisions about what's right and wrong and trusting ourselves, to back to trusting Genesis 1 and 2, trusting God, and we do that through Jesus. That's just that's where we're at now. So now life makes sense and quote unquote works when I'm doing things the way God has designed. And Jesus has shown us how to do that and provided the means through his death and resurrection and the sending of the Spirit to do that. So that's just what we're doing. That's just living the Christian life.
Yeah.
Well, and discipleship is doing that. And also the other thing about discipleship is it's done in community. So you're back to, now I'm finally getting to your question about having other people and being a multiplication idea. Well, I think the reason we have to make ourselves think about multiplication is that we think discipleship in a westernized American individualistic culture is an individual pursuit.
Yeah.
But it's never like that.
Yes.
The New Testament doesn't give us the option to be monks. And I've got some reasons later, because you asked about this, of why it has to be done in community. So as far as forcing yourself to think about multiplication, again, it should just be natural.
Yeah.
Because you're doing it together. Because you have to. We're not trying to be in our little prayer cells by ourselves all day and then come out on Sunday mornings and go back in our prayer cells. Now, there is a place for that. Jesus got alone. I'm not saying there's not, but it's not the sine qua non of the Christian life.
Can you define that?
The Christian life?
No, sine qua non.
Essence.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'll write that one down. That's
Very
good. Yeah, and I think we would probably be remiss as well if we didn't identify that what you're talking about is essentially, I mean, the mission statement of our church, to know him and to make him known, identifies those two pieces. So the knowing Christ is the being a disciple of Jesus, and that we would do that personally, biblically, relationally, prayerfully, right? That we would know Christ, be a disciple in those ways. And that then we would make him known through missionally, mercifully, resourcefully, generationally. So those pieces are essentially communicating what it means to be a disciple of Jesus and then what it means to make other disciples of Jesus. And so those things being paired together, I think, is critical. I find that at least for myself, I go through seasons where I feel like I'm doing one well versus the other, where I can drive into a lot of personal time with the Lord, but then it seems like mission is a struggle for me, or vice versa, where I'm really pouring myself out, in the local church, and then I feel like I'm neglecting my time with the Lord. So I think that it's really important to continue to see those together as overlapping instead of competing in any way.
Well, yeah, I would say, can you only have time with the Lord when you're by yourself?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I think that's a good thing to think about as well, because for me, like, at least there's a tendency to think of like time with the Lord as personal quiet time. Right.
Well, that's our West. We've been,
and it's westernized.
Well, it's also been, we're baptized into that. Right. Our quiet times and our personal quiet times doesn't mean we shouldn't have that, but that becomes the measuring stick of my spiritual gauge, spiritual maturity. How well have I done in my devotions this week? Right. And that's not it at all. Right. I mean, I don't see that in the fruit of the Spirit. It's a means. It's not the goal. And by the way, I think you could say all the fruit of the Spirit, which is the measuring gauge of your spiritual maturity, have connected to them others.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can't be kind to yourself. I mean, only to yourself. I mean, loving and kindness and gentleness and patience have to do with how you relate with other people. So you're back to community.
Yeah, and it assumes community.
Yes,
right?
That's it. It's assumed. I mean, and I'm guessing that Paul and the other guys in the New Testament would kind of be shocked that how we just do life by ourselves and just think about it, how I'm doing.
Yeah. That's good.
Hey, let me go. I mean, since we're talking about it,
go for it.
Because you ask a question. I mean, what about groups and at the end? And I think this, and again, you talked about being practical, but I think you got to think about why first. And I put just in some ideas of why we can't grow alone. So I've got, I think, 4 reasons. Number one, you can't grow alone because we're never objective about ourselves. For example, our weak spots, or what our idols actually are, the sins behind the sins. And then we need other people to help, who know us, who can help us with that. But I also think we aren't objective about ourselves because we can be too hard on ourselves. And we don't actually see that the Spirit has been working in our life. I mean, the fruit of the Spirit is a slow process, and you need people to help you see where it's happening, that maturation. So you need encouragement. So we got to have other people who are not objective. Number 2, sin will lose its power over us when it's brought into the light with a brother or sister, right? And there's a quote here. The extent we are willing to reveal to others those areas of our life that we need God's transforming touch is the extent to which we are inviting the Holy Spirit to make us new. Right? That if you keep it inside and struggle with it internally, it has power, it grows, right? But when you bring it out to the sun, it's kind of like algae or whatever that would be. But it comes out into the sun and it just, of talking to others about it.
Yeah.
Number 3, you have to have others because we can't see Jesus properly by ourselves. Worship is a communal act. So a couple examples of that, like when you visit a museum and you're looking at this painting, you can look at that by yourself and absorb things, or you can go to it with a friend or two and you'll talk with each other about what you're seeing and they'll see things you never saw. And so you're together looking at this beautiful thing. And I also thought in another illustration, it's another area of life where we experience joy. It's like rooting for your favorite sports team. I mean, it's much more fun to do it with 100,000 people at Ohio Stadium
Oh, for sure.
than with 2 other people in your living room.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just something to that. And we are made to look at Jesus communally.
The thing that's interesting about that painting illustration as well that I love is that when you begin to explore that world, there's a history to it all as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that you're entering into an ongoing dialogue about that artist, about the paintings, about their work. There's this whole rich history in that world. And similarly, I think when we begin to explore our relationship with Christ, this is something that's ongoing and rich and deep, and you're doing it in community with, an assembly, right, of his followers and those who have been following him for, 2,000 years, so that's a good illustration.
Yeah. And the other thing was, again, thinking about community number 4, the power and promise of diversity will add more depth and nuance. And, we can't grow alone in the Christian life, and we can't grow if we only seek people who are just like us. We need those different angles. And, the Bible's pretty clear in Revelation 5, right? That every tribe, right, every language, every people are going to be around that throne. And none of us have experienced that, and we need that. So that's even the more imperative to making our community more than just people just like us.
Yeah.
But that's another story. So anyway, yeah, I think it's got to be communal. And so it's the reason we have to emphasize multiplication is because we're so individualistic. If we had a New Testament perspective of spiritual growth and maturity, we would automatically assume community, which would then lead into helping others as they help us. And so it would just happen. We wouldn't have to harp on it.
Sure. That's good. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come back momentarily.
Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome back. We've had some really excellent conversation, I think, so far on broader dynamics of discipleship and definitions. And I want to drill down to some specifics within our church right now. And obviously, if you're listening and you're not a part of our church, you can just kind of get a window into some of the things that we're working through right now. But Scott, from like an elder shepherd / teaching in various spheres perspective, our church has grown immensely over the last few years, and we've seen some really incredible, influx of members and people who are attending on Sunday morning, and some powerful community, lots of really amazing things that we're thankful to the Lord for what He's done. But obviously, it does produce some challenges when it comes to community and discipleship. And there are certain aspects of discipleship that can take place in like a small church context that can't in a larger church context. So as we kind of make this transition as a church into, there are over 1,000 people here on a Sunday morning, 1,300 people that will come through the doors of our church. What does that look like long-term, for us to organize to be able to continue to accomplish the Great Commission, and to see discipleship organically take place within our church? What are your thoughts on that?
Excellent question. And if we define the Christian life by walking and growing with Jesus with other people, then it's not an option. If it was just a group of 20 people who met every Sunday, it would be easy. So in a big church, it's much easier for somebody to come in anonymously, sit in a chair, say hi to the greeter, listen to the sermon, sing the songs, and walk out. But we've already established, or at least I hope we have, that you can't do that. That's not the Christian life. That you can't be formed wholly like that.
Yes.
You're going to be, in a way, deformed. And so we, as leaders, and that's our job, right? Ephesians 4, to equip people to do the ministry. So again, that's community.
when you have a big church, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? Well, the strengths are we have a lot of budget and staff and manpower to throw at the problem. Okay. And we also have a lot of lay people capable of taking positions to help with it too. So that's the plus. The negative is you got to be really intentional to help people, and you got to be intentional to keep it before them. And so that's why I'm a firm believer in different spheres and contexts where people can find community to do life together. We have a number of them. I have a bias, which we may talk about if you want, but we have ones as big as growth groups that may have 20 to 30 people in it with all ages. We have Sunday school. We have classes that meet that may have 20 people in it. Then you have ministries, age groups like the YAM and the SAM and all those young adult that come together by age group. We have women's ministry, men's ministry that come together by gender. All of those are good on-ramps for people to find community, but even those aren't enough. Right? So to me, it's like if you don't have someone that you can just talk about Jesus with and God with and your life and how it intersects with the Bible, for example, from your work to your struggles to your golf game. If you don't have somebody that you do that with, you're not doing the Christian life in community. Just singing a worship song together is not enough. You got to have people talking about your deepest struggles and your greatest joys and how they intersect with God with people.
Yeah.
And that's an issue of fluency and opportunity. Fluency is just like if you're learning Spanish, you got to learn the lingo, you got to learn the vocabulary, you got to learn the syntax, you got to learn the grammar, and you got to practice with somebody who's a Spanish speaker. Well, the Christian life has lingo and grammar and syntax and vocabulary. And so we have to have somebody we're learning from and teaching. And that's happening.
In community, talking,
right?
Because fluency happens when you have immersed yourself in a culture and a country for a while. Right. You can't learn that in a classroom.
And to take a different, another direction, it's obvious, right, in American culture that women are better about talking about life and serious stuff about life than men are. They just are. Now, and so like when I'm thinking about discipleship and community in a church for a man, part of that is helping him be able to talk about what's on his insides.
Yeah.
Because some men never do that.
Right.
Because they're taught that's not manly.
It's not culturally acceptable.
But if you don't do that, then you're not availing that part of your life. You're not learning. We talked about quiet time earlier. Part of the value and importance of quiet time is to read your Bible and think about your day and put the two together. So as I think about what I got going today or what happened yesterday, and I'm reading this passage from Philippians 1, that's giving me some insight. I'm thinking about that stuff from God's perspective. So you don't learn to do that without talking to other people about it.
Yeah.
Hearing those who are more fluent than you,
yeah,
right? And teaching others who are less fluent than you. So back to your original question, I think the prime way to do that is small groups of same genders. If men are in co-ed groups, they're not going to talk about, they may spout off about theological issues, but they're never going to talk about personal issues.
Sure.
Right? That's what women do.
Yeah.
So you got to put them in a men's group, in a small group, the people they trust, people they know that love them. They can talk about their life. And that person in a non-judgmental way is going to listen, love them, give them instruction, give them feedback, give them encouragement, give them admonishment. But I really, as I think about a UBC, I think every person needs to be in that kind of situation. Now, the other thing about that, though, is some people they already have those groups from other spheres. Like, for example, I work at a Christian institution, and I've worked for 20 some years with some guys on my hallway. We've been there, we have conversations like this as a matter of fact, right? So we do. And so the imperative for me to have people at UBC with me is not as much, but the imperative for me to have it with people in UBC is much.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't just look at it selfishly. But I don't want to say it only can happen through church. But most people, it's not going to happen if it doesn't happen through church.
I think, Scott, you and I have talked about this because there are so many more ministries and programs and more age demographic related things that are being raised up, regularly through our church. And it can be overwhelming in the sense of like, oh, if I want to be involved in everything, I'm at the church all the time. And I don't think for most, people in our church or in other churches as well, that those types of things are realistic if we want to really be, ministering in the workplace and with your family and in the marketplace and meeting on non-believers regularly. And so being able to self-discern your own spiritual needs and the areas that you really need to be plugged into and prioritize, I do think is increasingly more important, as our church continues to grow, for people to be able to discern and say, okay, I know that I need a couple women or a couple men who are speaking into my life. And so if I can find that in a growth group, fantastic. If the growth group that I've been in is more shallower relationships and conversations, maybe I need to transition someplace else. Or maybe I need to find that in a micro group, with a couple people, or maybe I find that with my women's ministry table, at Women's Bible Fellowship or something along those lines. But basically just to say that each one of us has to discern those different spheres of need and then go after it.
Well, let me just interject there. I would say, thinking about leadership, staff, elders, et cetera, I think we have to think more about how we help people discern.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think we should expect Joe Smith, who's done the same thing for 25 years as far as his Christian life goes, and not been able to talk about his deepest issues with somebody, that he can do it. He can figure out how to do it himself.
Yeah.
They even know it's a problem. See, that I think even that, and that's something I think, you think about, well, that's a Sunday morning discussion. But you also, and I know we do it in our men's and women's ministries, and so we're getting people who are thinking about that.
Yeah, it's good to think about, because I think, there is such a way in which you can always just over busy yourself, just doing all of the things. And we got to do this kind of program. We got to do this kind of event. We got to do a Bible study for this group and a Bible study for that group. And it's like, well, maybe we're so busy doing all of these things that we need to dial in on the specifics of how are we helping people, as you said.
And I think it's, something I've just been thinking about over the last 6 months. I think we can simplify just the spheres of growth. Like you think about, our physical, our growing as an adult person. We have to think about our diet. We got to think about our exercise, our sleep. There are certain things we know, big picture, we just think about.
Yeah.
Well, I think in the Christian life and helping other Christians in a church is simply learning, education. What does God? What is the Bible is the user's manual. It is the Constitution. It is the thing that tells us about life, right? So we need to learn and know that continually and develop that. But then we also got to develop the ability to take that and integrate it when I have a decision to make, or when I have a stress in my life, or when I have to have a conversation with my spouse or my kid, or the ability to integrate what I'm learning into real life is another learning educational step, right? And so that's one area: education, learning, community, right? and deep spiritual friendships. Maybe it's another way to put it. Okay. Now I don't want to not talk about spousal relationships, but you've got to have deep spiritual friendships of the same gender.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the third one is service. That's not our goal today, but how are you serving both inside and outside the church? So if you can just think about those three areas instead of all the multitude of things, and ask yourself, how am I doing in my education and my learning? How am I doing in my community? How am I doing in my service? And then starting to make choices from that. I think that's a more helpful way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there can be a mindset of kind of cookie cutter or one size fits all on a lot of these things. And it's not. It's much more, each one of us, by the power of the Holy Spirit, asking God, being self-reflective, Lord, maybe I need to pray that you would help me to be better at forming relationships with the same sex. That if I'm a man and I don't have any close guy friends who I can really talk to, Lord, help me, help put people in my life, help me to connect with people. I think that there are a lot of areas like that we can just, if we don't take time to reflect on it and think about it, it can just kind of fall by the wayside, and it just kind of, if it doesn't happen naturally, it's just kind of like, oh, well, that's just kind of the way it is. And I think that, to your point, we need to be intentional to self-assess on a regular basis and continue to say, all right, Lord, where do you have for me to grow? And, what areas of our church, can I get involved in to see that happen in me and for me to be a part of seeing those things happen in others?
Yeah. And you asked you mentioned the word mentorship, and that kind of rings a bell here, because I think of the parallel back to our physical bodies. I do strength training, don't laugh, because it's really important as you age. Okay. And so I have a guy who teaches at the school in the health related areas. Yeah. But he's a trainer. So he trains me to get stronger, and he knows how to do it so I don't hurt myself, and how to progress in the right way, all that kind of stuff, right? So I trust him. He tells me where I'm weak and what to do to become stronger, and what I need to do so I'll be okay when I'm 80. Well, that's where mentors come in, and that's where, if you don't have any idea, right, there's somebody that you can get connected to who can spend time with you over coffee and kind of ask you questions and talk to you and kind of help you see, these are areas I'm weak in. This is how to get stronger and how to do better. Don't injure myself, but be realistic about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's also where mentorship comes in. And we tend to only think about that as, a young 21-year-old guy with a 50-year-old guy.
Right.
And I'm wondering now, as I'm aging, how many 60-year-old guys need that. And again, it's not age, right? It's spiritual age, spiritual maturity.
Yeah. I think that there's a temptation to view it as an actual age, right? But there's a spiritual component to it. I think of even like 1 John chapter 2 and the conversation where he's addressing, the young men and the fathers, and think of that. There's been a lot of conversation over the years about whether that's, actual age, or whether that's like spiritual age. But and the concept, though, of saying the spiritual maturity of people is what you're wanting to seek out people who can be an encouragement to you and to imitate their faith.
But also to train you.
Yeah.
Okay. Not just to be an encouragement. They're actually training you what it means to engage God, His Word, engage life, engage how I'm doing in life, and intersecting those two things.
And I think that it's important for us to notice in that as well, that there is a necessary invitation to that, because people will not just do that unless you are inviting them to, right? If you're not inviting them to reprove you, they're not going to feel the liberty. And so I do think that it's important for us to think about that, in the sense that if we're not inviting, people to say, hey, like, I want you to speak into my life. I want you to equip me and, you know, help me to do this. Well, you know, you can't expect people to be doing that. I think of, overarchingly, I think of Galatians 6:2 in all of this, right? Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. How are we loving one another well in all areas of life and bearing with one another's spiritual deficiencies and pouring into each other to be able to help grow? And that is the ultimate goal and purpose of what we're trying to get after. How are we able to do that in whatever sphere you know, we're talking about, that we would be able to dive into those types of relationships?
And I would not be true to myself. That sounds terrible. True to what means so much to me about spiritual growth, to say, not add to that, not just where I am, but who Jesus is and who he is
Defines.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, but who he is and his love for me overcomes that. Right? So what's ultimately driving my growth is not guilt, but gratitude. Okay. So that's because, like I said, remember earlier I said you need people to help you see where you're struggling, but you also need people to say, hey, you're doing well here. And mostly you need people to say, okay, but Jesus doesn't demand perfection before he loves you. He already loves you. Right. And so that kind of thing too, we don't want to miss that.
Yeah. Well, amen to that. All right. Well, Scott, I would be remiss if before we wrap this up today, I didn't ask if you had any culturally relevant songs or influences or things that you wanted to conclude as we land the plane here.
Well, I do like the modern day poets of modern day pop culture. And this one is more of an indie culture. It's a guy by the name of Sufjan Stevens, who was popular earlier 2000s. In fact, we had a Yorkie named Sufjan, little known fact, because my kids love Sufjan Stevens. But he came out with an album 23 called Javelin, and one of the songs is called "Will Anybody Ever Love Me?" And the chorus is like, "Will anybody ever love me for good reasons, without grievance, not for sport? Will anybody ever love me? In every season, pledge allegiance to my heart and pledge allegiance to my burning heart. Will anybody ever love me?" And that ultimately is what we're seeking. Okay. We left our source of love in Genesis 3, and we've been looking ever since. And that's why, I love pop culture songs, because often they get that. They don't know where to find it.
It's a cry.
But I also think a lot of us, especially men again, don't know how to verbalize that longing. We really, all that manly stuff we do because we're looking for somebody to love us. And we think that's the way we'll get it. And to be able to transfer that longing, first to see you've got it and what it really is, and then to show how Jesus provides it. That's discipleship. Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Well, with that, Scott, thanks for coming on as one of our first guests. Grateful that you were able to.
I'm a little bitter that I was not number one.
Number one in our hearts, always. Lots of helpful content, I think, as well as good dialogue. I hope this is helpful for you, our listeners, and that you consider how the Lord might use you to make him known in your home, in your community, and the world. We'll see you next time on another episode of UBC Talking Points.